The funny thing about wanting to introduce a stealth-based episode is how do you be stealthy about it?
Well, I had an alternative idea if you just want to run with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was actually checking out the channel recently, and I saw we just uploaded the episode on villains.
Mm-hmm.
To which I said, we did an episode on villains? How long ago was that? How far back is our backlog?
We've been proactive. We're like as of this recording, we just uploaded episode 8, and we have like another 5 or 6 still in the queue, and then there's another 3 that I still have to edit, which I could have finished by now if I wasn't a lazy piece of shit. But yeah.
Wow. It's like we need to, I don't know, like take some time off so we can get the buffer lined up so I can actually remember we did these episodes. I mean, that would have been, what, 2 months ago?
More than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this is actually a very fun topic. It's something I personally like. I know you've enjoyed occasionally. And
Absolutely.
Most importantly, it was actually requested by user...
I forgot the name of the user.
By user, I forgot the name of the user. Probably 12.
One person's going to be so mad. I'm pretty sure there's numbers in his name. I will.
We've pissed off our only commenting fan.
Yeah. I've let the success get to my head, and I've completely forgotten why I did this in the first place. I used to be about the music, man.
Wow, that explains why this has been replaced with very expensive vodka. Which tastes like water.
Well, that's how you know it's expensive, when it goes down easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So what I'd like to do is, we're not necessarily just going to talk about stealth games. I want us to talk about stealth in games.
I are a sneaky ninja. I just realized your mug might be in the way. Okay, enough of the sign.
I think I usually try to aim for in front of the mugs. These things could stand to be a little closer. There we go. Okay, so we don't need to define stealth this time. We all know what stealth is. It's when you don't get to fight things.
Or when, essentially, getting from point A to B does not necessarily result in a trail of blood.
Yeah.
It can. I mean, regrettably, something we've seen with a lot of stealth games these days is that you're stealthy killing as opposed to stealthy getting around things. Which...
Yeah. Now, as far as I can look back, the first instance that I can think of a stealth game was the original Metal Gear. Not Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation. We're talking Metal Gear on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And Hideo Kojima was struggling at the time because he had put out a couple of games prior to that, and none of them were working. And he was kind of in the same position that Square was in when they nailed it with Final Fantasy. They were running out of ideas, things weren't working. And it's when people are kind of forced to deliberate and are feeling the pressure, that's when people tend to come up with some really good ideas to get out of those situations, which kind of does tie in a little bit to it being a stealth game. So, and it was a great departure because usually on the Nintendo Entertainment System, when you think action or any military tone, you're going to think Contra, right? You're going to think really strong guys, huge weapons, no shirts, back flipping, forward flipping, every kind of flipping possible, shooting things and bullets flying everywhere, and that's what we think of when we think video games, especially in the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's one of the first things that just came to mind.
I think with Nintendo Entertainment System, you're usually thinking mass animal slaughter by virtue of breaking their necks.
Yeah, well, it's just like whenever you would watch, say, television that had a very lax opinion on gamers, you would see some nerdy kid going like this with his controller, like, I gotta get past this level, and there's like bright colors and beeps and boops, and you have no idea what game it is because those beeps and boops are completely game indifferent. Yeah. But the point to all this is that Metal Gear was a departure from this because although you could fight, and as in most stealth games, you can fight, you probably shouldn't. You were outgunned, you were outmanned, you are outnumbered, you were out everything except for outsmarted.
Well, I'm not quite sure how the original ones work, but like I played the Metal Gear Solid series, and the problem against fighting in those games has always been the invisible clown car. You alert one enemy, everybody in the whole area knows you're there, and no matter how many of them you shoot down, they're just more and more and more on and more on and more on and more on, and it was just until you...
Are you saying moron after moron after moron, like they're all just...
Well, that they're putting more onto
Yeah.
you and more onto. It's a double usage of the word. I'm pretty sure it's an argument fallacy. But
Now I really want there to be a stealth mission that takes place in a circus where a clown car literally does show up and a bunch of clowns pop out. It says, "Where's the trouble?" Like, oh, it's on the other side of the car. Oh, we just got everybody in. Everybody back in the car.
Well, the point was that you could kill one or two, but you had to go back into hiding. You had to stealth somehow, or or you'd just be endlessly piled on. In fact, in number 3, you had a poison pill you could take that would give you a game over screen, but you had sort of a time limit to open up your inventory and take the revive pill, which was inside your tooth.
Oh, wow.
So you would do that. They would see, oh, he's dead. Okay, and they'd walk away, and then you bite down the revive pill inside your tooth and wake back up again.
You're talking about the Snake Eater?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I wasn't sure if you meant like the third Metal Gear before we get into the more contemporary ones.
Yeah. Well, I haven't played the original ones. I've only played the Solid, and again, the clown car issue made shooting your way through any problem pretty much undoable. I mean, you could stealth kill a few people, but I spent most of my time crawling. I spent a large amount of my time crawling.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 3 had a lot of crawling in it. I got very well acquainted with the ground.
Which makes sense.
Mm.
You should be crawling a lot if you're trying to stay hidden. Metal Gear is also famous for the use of the cardboard box, which allows you to hide inside of a portable cardboard box.
Oh, and they added oil drum in the 4th game.
Oh, an oil drum.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, in the 4th game, you had optic camouflage. Snake would put his hand up against something, and then he would take that color, and it was great because it would actually track how. And it's not Metal Gear Solid 4 wasn't the first game to do this. There's that system where it will kind of tell you how stealthy you're being right now.
Well, the third one, you had multiple camo outfits, and it would give you a percentage of how well hidden you were, which is funny because there was, I forget the final boss, minor spoilers, the final boss in Metal Gear Solid 3, you were in a field of white flowers because Hideo Kojima, and I put on the lab coat, which is, again, what you use to hide in the lab, and I lay down on the ground, and I had like 80-something camo rate because the flowers were white and I was white.
Makes sense.
It was
That's how rabbits do it.
Yeah, but again, it was the lab coat, not the snow camo.
Right. Yeah, there's some suspension of disbelief, especially when it comes to the Metal Gear Solid franchise.
Well, I mean, that very boss fight alone, like you guys just get started and all of a sudden the entire field just blooms to flowers for no apparent reason. Kojima has a very artistic sense to him.
Yeah, I like Kojima because he's trying to make... I think he's trying to make more of a commentary on how he perceives American culture, but still make a Japanese game.
Which was strange, because I actually felt number 3 felt more like a samurai movie. It was the idea of, here's
Well,
the
I mean,
novice.
Metal Gear Solid 2, you get a katana, so it's happened before that. And the first one, there was ninjas. I mean, obviously, there's a huge Japanese influence in it, but you still play American characters up against American enemies. That's the thing that always sort of rang true with me, is that why don't you just have this take place in Japan? What is it about American culture that it is that you want to talk so much about? And I think it ties into how he perceives the American industrial war complex, and how in Metal Gear Solid 4, Snake says war has changed, but we know that Snake identifies with himself as a video game character, and this is proven. Like, he knows he's a video game character. He talks about, oh, I'm going to be in the next Smash Brothers. Oh my god, that's so cool. So when he says war has changed, he's saying that war has changed because war has changed in real life, but he's also saying that war as a game, the games have changed. So he has to kind of change with it a little bit.
Yes, but this is not specifically a Metal Gear episode.
Yeah, I mean, Metal Gear is just great.
Yeah, the stealth aspects, again, I feel like 3 was just the highlight. 4 was, good, but, 3 was really the highlight because you lost a lot of your advanced tech. You lost a lot of the things you'd come to rely on, a lot of the tropes of video games. And that was the first one where you could actually switch your camera to over the shoulder as opposed to nailed to a passing pigeon.
Now, why I enjoyed the stealth in the original Metal Gear Solid, and I also enjoyed the stealth a lot in Splinter Cell, and it came down to level design. I think the tricky thing about your stealth mechanics is that the more open you make your map, which people are kind of saying about this new Metal Gear that's coming out, is
it's entirely open world.
It's either going to make your stealth incredibly easy, because you can find something to exploit, and then you can use that trick to get past almost every instance, or it's going to make it incredibly unintuitive and unclear. Because when you would say you would get to just any area in Metal Gear Solid, each area kind of functioned like a level. So you had to get through this level before you can get to the next zone, and there was some backtracking, but overall you didn't do too much of it. It was just, for old time's sake. So each time you would have to sneak past that level, beating the level was figuring out, where do I hide? What are the patterns? How do I probably get past this? And there was a lot of trial and error. You would die so many times in that.
So I guess you would say that was more of a route memorization game?
Yeah, it almost makes me think of Frogger a little bit, just in the way you're waiting for things to kind of pass, and then you wait for your safe point to get through. Yeah. Now,
in terms of the whole open world thing...
It's okay, my sentence was kind of fractured. Go ahead.
Okay, well, in terms of the whole open world thing, I agree with you that there is a bit of a balance. Something Dishonored did was all the level, like, you were put into a linear level, but that level itself had multiple paths you could pick from. One particular area that I was having difficulty getting through a building, and there was no way to get to the next area without getting through the building. Something I accidentally discovered is by rapidly using Blink, I could position myself on something outside the building and essentially just hop around. Because I'd upgraded the Blink power, I could hop around it. So this difficult thing, which I couldn't get through, because the game declared you don't have to do this how we said you had to do it, I could actually just go around the obstacle. And that at least made me feel incredibly intelligent, because that was kind of accidentally discovering something which I'm not quite sure the developers may have entirely intended, because I was again hopping around on what looked mostly like decorations on the side of the building. But
yeah, it's tricky with developer intention, because I'm just thinking, if I discovered this while I'm testing my own game, and then I would think, is there another way that I want the players to beat this? Because if so, I might take this out. Because if I don't take it out, and then the players, they're not going to get the full impact of the experience, because they're finding such weird shortcuts around it. I mean, it's still, you're getting to the end of the game. That's your objective, but you also want the gameplay itself to feel intuitive and to feel engaging with you.
Well, I mean, it's not like I broke the game by phasing through a wall. I simply went around an obstacle using a very power that the game itself not only gives you, but gives you by default.
Yeah.
Like, you start off with Blink. Here's the first thing you can use. So I think in that case, that was the developers giving me some freedom to do it.
A good example of open world stealth that I can think of, this ties into making sure that your artificial intelligence is up to par, and this was Crysis. You would get to this power suit that you can give yourself a lot of strength, so you can punch somebody in the face and they go flying, or you can break walls down. There was speed, there was a way to use strength to improve your jump, but there was also stealth. You would go invisible, and then you can pop out of it. There was a catch: if you were to automatically fire your weapon while in stealth, your energy meter would almost completely deplete. And so it was a way of sort of reprimanding you for shooting out of invisibility, which just seemed a little weird to me, because I'm not sure why the suit would malfunction like that. You're just shooting a weapon. It's pretty straightforward.
Well, it actually makes sense. The suit is not only turning you invisible, it's turning your gun and any other gear you have on you invisible. The moment you fire a bullet, the system tries to... I'm going to point this away from you, because again, I'm trying to lower the amount of violence I do against you. The moment you fire the bullet, the suit is basically trying to make the bullet invisible, but then the bullet just gets away and basically causes an error that causes the suit's batteries to drain, because it's trying to turn your bullet invisible, but then the bullet is just gone so fast and it just depletes everything.
Okay, I will accept that, but I feel like if these people are putting so much work into this advanced power suit, they would have figured out a workaround, like
bows and arrows.
How about yeah, actually they did figure that out.
Yeah.
Or how about just not worrying about making the bullet go invisible? because it's not like the bullet's visible to begin with. It's a bullet. It goes fast. It kills things.
Yes, but you want the suit to still turn anything you pick up invisible, and anything you throw. Like, I think you could still throw things and it wouldn't break your invisibility. Actually, that was...
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. But
I still remember shooting a tree, having it fall over, and then picking up the remnants of the tree. It's like, this is so ridiculously pointless, but so fun.
What was great about that game was that the stealth in that was a choice. You didn't have to do it Predator style, but you could if you wanted to. And it was rewarding to do so because when you pick one guy off, then you go back into invisibility, and everybody else is like, oh, where'd it go? And they do actually bring in some backup, and you just keep going through taking each person out individually, and then eventually you're down to the last person, and then you just pop out of invisibility and punch them in the face. It was a great way of doing it. Crisis 2, they did it. It's not that it's not open world, but they closed it off a lot more because it was now the urban setting versus a jungle island setting. So you still had some choice in the matter of what direction you wanted to take, and you could still play it stealthily if you wanted to. The difference was you didn't have boats, or you didn't have ways to drop in from trees. You couldn't... my favorite was driving in a car all the way from one side of the area to the other, jumping out of the car in the last second, shooting the gas tank in the back, letting the car explode just as it hits the house. You didn't get that kind of experimentation with Crisis 2, which is part of why I think people still prefer the original.
Well, I think, back to our last episode, one of the things that annoyed me about Crisis 2 was that it had a progression system. You had to kill these aliens using a melee attack to harvest this material to upgrade various abilities, and you could alter the abilities on the go, which was nice. But the thing about Crisis 1 is, here's your power suit, your guns, whatever the hell you find on the ground. Like, you had everything. Yeah. It was on-site protocol, it was all that stuff. The second one, you were constantly trying to kill these enemies in a specific way, to harvest this matter, to upgrade your abilities, to alter all this stuff. Like, you weren't just out of the gate, all that you could be. It was a matter of you're running around trying to upgrade yourself, become better and better. The thing that was really fun in Crisis 1 is that I could, in the middle of, they would eventually just start shooting at where they last saw you if you try to turn invisible in front of people.
Yeah.
So there would be issues where, okay, I would be caught, or I would turn off invisibility to shoot somebody, and then some other people I didn't know show up, maximum armor, and just start strafing, try to take them out, use maximum strength to jump up to something. I had the freedom to change my style how I wanted, where in Crisis 2, you were kind of locked into whatever path you were upgrading on. Yes, you could swap out the upgrades, but in the middle of a firefight, you think you're going to bring up your hand interface and just, okay, this power, this power, this power. Okay. That was actually a little funny, though, because first and second one, you could bring up the gun interface, swap it out. So, okay, gun, hand,
yeah, but they actually do that in the military. When you're behind cover, you hold up your gun and then you can reload, or it's kind of like a safe zone just for your head and your gun. In Christ, like you don't generally see people hold in war. It doesn't make sense.
No, I always liked the fact that you could hold up the gun and you could actually swap it out and see the augments change. And
So what was interesting to me that I had thought of about just discussing this is that the funny thing about stealth is that although there are some conditions to it, you have to remain hidden. You are probably underpowered versus your enemy, but it's also a method of freedom. And I think that's what I kind of want to ask is, like, why do you think people really enjoy stealth games when games are supposed to be about sort of that visceral release or that catharsis?
The power fantasy.
The power fantasy.
I like stealth games because they really force me to think. They force me to approach problems in various different ways. Like, I like the arena shooter. So the idea of running around with a rocket launcher, doing occasional double hops to make sure that someone else can't lock onto you, bouncing the alt fire with the grenade, I love that sensation. But the point of a stealth game is it slows things down. It forces you to look at problems from an entirely different way. I think one of the really great examples of stealth in recent generations would probably be the Batman series.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And that one, you would find a perch. Like, I always stayed in the air. I think most people play Batman stay in the air.
Most people play Batman trying to be as Batman as possible. Because if that's the point of the game, come on.
Yeah, so you spend a lot of time staying in the air than just going out behind people. You would turn on the detective vision, see everything that's around you, and you'd really have to plan things out. These two people are next to each other, so that means I can kind of try to do double takedown, but that's going to be loud. Do I have an escape path? I could plant an explosive thingy here, on this plane of glass that will knock him out when he passes. It's really, again, as you said, it's a matter of being smarter than the game, because the game really does have the major advantage. I remember the Splinter Cell saga had a versus mode of spies versus mercenaries.
Yes.
Mercenaries would be in first-person perspective and have heavy weaponry.
Yeah, they had flashlights, which could give you away if you weren't careful with when you use them. They had grenades and a lot of firepower.
And the spies would be in third person, and they'd be using stuff like cover and other things to try to outflank and outmaneuver. Now, for all intents and purposes, the mercenaries, they're more powerful, and the enemies in Batman, especially when they get guns in their hands, they're just ridiculously more powerful than you. So you have to outplay them. You have to outsmart. You have to figure out who can I take down, how much noise is it going to make, can I get to this next thing. Another great example of stealth, I think, would be the recent Deus Ex, the Human Revolution one. Director's Cut's a lot better. They fixed the boss battles, thank you. Which actually was a hilarious thing about the Metal Gear Solid series. They even, Kojima even admitted to throwing up his hands saying, like, oh, it's a boss battle, we can't really make this stealth, so let's just go as ridiculously action-y as we can, throw grenades at a tank. But that game was great because you could break out stealth if you want to. You could try to shoot everybody, but it gave you a lot of interesting tools. You could see through the walls. You could even just turn yourself invisible, but dear God, did that eat your battery power like you wouldn't believe. It gave you lots of traversing abilities. Even though I was a very stealthy player in Human Revolution, I never used the cloak. I would break line of sight. I would make sure they couldn't see me. I'd had the extra jump power, and I would just constantly, again, try to stay out of their view. But in the event of emergency, you still had enough firepower in that game to do something. Like, if you did get caught, you could break out the assault rifle. You could break out the rocket launcher. How the hell did you have enough inventory room for that thing, you idiot? And you could fight back. And I think that's really, as someone who enjoys stealth games, I still want to feel like there's something I can do. Recently on Steam, a while back, from when we made this video, there was a game where you played as a goblin. It was in the Might and Magic series. It was Stinks, Master of Shadows?
No idea.
Anyways, the comment a lot of people have made about that game, and what kind of turns me off about it, is if you are caught, like if they actually see you, you pretty much just put down the controller and let them kill you. There are some abilities to run away, there are some abilities to do stuff, but you'll have enemies who, the moment they know you're there, can now see you when you turn invisible. There's pretty much no point once you're caught. I think really good stealth games, at least it gives you some escape options. The Metal Gear Solid series,
but it functions as kind of a resource system, and I kind of talked about the same thing when I was talking about Resident Evil. Is that, let's say, for example, using Metal Gear, you do get caught by a guard, and you don't want this fight to be more drawn out than it has to be. But if you take this guy out, that'll give you some time to at least find a hiding place. So you use up some of your ammunition.
Yeah.
Now, you can't be guaranteed that when he dies, he's going to drop that ammunition. You can't be guaranteed you'll ever find ammunition again. You probably will, but it's no guarantee. So getting caught and a fight breaking out should still, like you said, at least give you some options, but the tension remains because you don't want to be fighting. You need to save this ammo for when an actual unpassable fight breaks out, where you actually do have to fight a tank.
Well, thankfully, the boss battles, he pretty much rained bullets on you.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I loved the original Splinter Cell. I thought that was a great mixture of good level design, good AI, and a character that was capable enough to deal with things as they came across. There's actually one really good level where you have to infiltrate the CIA, so you can't kill anyone. You can only use non-lethal weapons, and that's the first time you pick up your assault rifle that you use for the remainder of the game. Before that, you just had a pistol. And when you get that gun for the first time, you didn't even get to kill things with it. You can only fire non-lethal ammunition. So there's a great example of not only can you not get caught, but your cover can't be blown Actually, no, wait, sorry. I take that last part back. Your cover was blown right away. Because there was a cutscene where they go through all this trouble to give him his own personal ID and make him look the part. And then he gets into this one elevator and he's like, all right, time to go to work. And he just rips off all his clothing and he goes into Sam Fisher mode. Actually, would have been really cool if he had just been trying to be a CIA agent, but whatever.
Yeah, in terms of empowered, like the first time I ever really thought of the expression empowered stealth, I'm sure other people have thought of it, would actually have been the first Assassin's Creed game. I don't understand why everyone bashed it. It was a fantastic game. But there was this moment where I was being pursued by the guards, and I'd finally gotten ahead of them, and I jumped down onto a bench. Like, if you're on a bench, you're just sitting there with a few other people, again, you're hidden. So a bunch of the guards run by, and then one guard sticks behind. And he's got a sword up, like trying to look for where I am, kind of look where I am, and I look up and there's him, and on the other side of him there's a building. That building has a ladder on it. That ladder will get me to the rooftop. The rooftop will get me to safety because you can generally outspeed and outmaneuver people on the rooftops, and that was actually the only way to get back into the assassin building. So I just killed the guy, whatever. I just killed the target of the mission, so I was doing the runaway because it's a little hard in that game to kill the target and not get caught immediately afterwards.
Right.
So I was sitting there, and he's not going anywhere. Like he knows I'm somewhere here and back and forth, and I'm thinking all the other guards are gone. He's still here. The ladder that leads to my freedom is right behind him. He has to die. So I waited for him to be turning away, get up, do the blend action, killed him, and I got ready to basically do a panic run. And also the indicator went from they're looking to me to they've just got no idea where the hell I am. And that was really the moment where it clicked, and when I really said these people are on, these game creators are onto something. Because I just killed the only person who could have identified me, and now I've got free reign. They have no eyes on me. This is kind of how it works in real life. I was so used to the nanobots that just automatically alerted everybody that just, holy shit, I'm invisible now because the only person who ID'd me is gone. And I just ran up the ladder and left. And the games since the first one seem to have gotten a lot more towards... I guess there's a hell of a lot of power in your hands. You have, at one point, the ability just to call down a bunch of arrows from your trainees. They'll just kill guards in a zone. You've got crossbow, pistol, poison dart. You became more and more empowered. And in one hand, these are tools. On the other hand, in a stealth game, there should be limits to how many fights I can start, kill everybody there, and just walk off. And they seem to have been leaning back towards, again, trying to reel it into stealth, but especially when you look at the Ezio trilogy and Brotherhood, a lot of missions, there just really was no point in not just jumping in and taking out your sword because you could just counterattack everyone to death.
I haven't played much of the Assassin's Creed series, and I really don't want to keep having to have this habit where I have to justify my opinion on something whether or not I've played it. I've played a lot of games. I know how games work. So one of the things that I noticed, though, wasn't necessarily each individual game, but the fact that these games were coming out so rapidly. Ubisoft was trying to do the annualizable thing, taking after Activision. And the thing about stealth is that, much like how the game takes patience, I believe that the creation of the game also takes equal amounts of patience, because you can pad out an action game if your enemy AI is solid, and that you can use that enemy a few times justifiably, and you fight them, and it extends the life of the game, and it's fine. But in a stealth game, it's completely different. You have to give people options. You have to give people tools, and you have to give consequences to everything, and people have to be doing something. You can't just have a bunch of people standing around. In, say, when you're dealing with military stealth or whatever, and people are walking around, they're on guard, yeah, it's fine, and it makes sense. But if people are walking around town, you do need there to be some reason why people are doing that. So a lot of those details are part of what makes stealth games more difficult, in my opinion, to make than an action game. And so that's why they just don't have the time to fine-tune it.
Well, they did say that they made Brotherhood in a year, or they did put that as their time limit, and I think it really shows.
Yeah. Look, nobody needs these games to come out every year. I don't know how many more times that point needs to be driven home. Yeah, you get a bunch of people who are super stoked about it and they buy it, but you can have such a much bigger following if you cherish each of your games, and each one is actually a bigger deal. You will generate more sales from each one, and then have a little bit of DLC in there if you want to pad out your revenue from it. That's not a problem.
Well, Unity, I believe, is following the Seasons Pass thing in an attempt to, I guess, spur off, their stupid comments at E3, the first section of the Seasons Pass. You actually play as a female assassin.
Cool.
Also,
It's about time.
Yeah. Also, speaking of releasing games too soon, Unity has a hell of a lot of bugs.
There has been nothing but vitriol targeted towards Ubisoft as a result of this.
I wasn't that interested in Unity. I mean, I saw at a store you could buy a replica of the Brazier. It's got the built-in crossbow. I thought that was cool because definitely having the built-in crossbow makes it a lot stealthier than taking this huge thing off your back. But yeah, I was never really considering it. As we said in a previous episode, I wanted there to be co-op in Assassin's Creed, but 4 people, like, that's not a stealth operation anymore. Like, 2 people is a stealth operation.
Mayhem.
Yeah, you got one person acting as a distraction, or one person doing something, and the other guy takes out the target. Like, that's 2 people. Like, maybe a third, and he's just, the third guy's just this endless lookout. But 4 people, it's like, wow, this is just a cluster mess.
Yeah, but we're probably not the target market for that anymore. You ever notice that? It's like they try to skew these games to a younger crowd because they're not as developed in their tastes, and they don't identify when things are going to be good or bad just from looking at it.
I've never really gotten that opinion. I can sort of see why you may think that, but I've never really gotten that opinion.
It's a case by case basis, right?
Yeah,
I mean, each individual is different, but I'm saying that because I'm just trying to think of what the marketing people are trying to think of and what the publishers are trying to think about when they sell these games to people. A couple good examples of some good ones, some not so good ones. I was thinking about how almost every Legend of Zelda game at some point has had stealth. Some of the earlier ones, not so much, but at least as far as like the Nintendo 64, there is a... It's weird using that term stealth, because whenever I think stealth, I think going up behind somebody and cutting their throat. But as cool as that would be for Link to do, I don't think that's really in his MO. But yeah, there's always an area where you have to avoid detection somehow. And there was a great example of it in Wind Waker, where they put Link into this barrel and they fling him via catapult into this fortress, and the barrel breaks open, he falls over, and his weapon gets discarded and he can't find it. So he has to navigate the fortress on his wits. And there's an example of where stealth can give you an appreciation for some of the abilities that you have, because you might take them for granted. Link's always got his sword, so he can always at least try to swing it at things to solve his problems. But when you take that away from him, suddenly he has to adapt. And you actually do get to come back to that level later on with the sword and shield, and so you get to get revenge and all the things that you had to run from for so long. So that's a strong example of where stealth will work. Where it doesn't work was in Skyward Sword in the spirit realm, where you have to run around an area, collect a bunch of glowing things, fill up a glowing meter, and you have to avoid these ghosts that would try to kill you.
Were they ghosts or Poes?
They may not have been either, actually. They might have been spirits. I lose track of the spiritual side. But the problem with it was that they were able to successfully create tension, but I didn't appreciate the kind of tension they were creating, because you had to sort of freeze time in order for these things to not come after you, and you would freeze time by picking up this other set of glowing thingies, but there was only so many of them. And so
it's starting to sound like Pac-Man.
A little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, Pac-Man is the original stealth game. You're right. The problem with it was that running around collecting things isn't great. And just because something is coming after you and you have to run for it and you have to try to impede them, it doesn't make it all that much better. Tension can be incredibly frustrating if you're not enjoying the tension. A couple of other good examples. This is a small example of stealth in an action horror first-person shooter, Left 4 Dead, The Witches.
Oh.
Yeah. So, for those of you who haven't played Left 4 Dead, you're usually
you throw
fighting
Molotov
off,
cocktails on them.
and they would get mad, and they would run after you, and hopefully they would burn up before they get to you.
Well, okay, if you're playing with people you know, then you avoid the witches. If you're playing with people you don't know, then you have to Molotov on the first chance you get because somebody's going to think it's just freaking hilarious to startle the witch and wake her up and chase her out. So
Eventually
you don't
people
trust
figured
those
out
bugs.
there was a way to deal with them, which is the auto shotgun. It fired off enough rounds so that she would take the damage and she would die, but I never mastered that particular skill. But what was great about that is that game already has a certain level of tension to it because you never know when someone's going to come after you. You never know when the next horde of the zombies are going to come get you, and you can hear clues of the other special zombies.
Tank had his own theme song.
Yeah, the boomer, he kind of like, and he stumbles around, and then there's the smoker. You can hear him coughing, and he's trying to pull you. With the witch, of course, you would hear her crying, and she's just sitting on the ground weeping. And what was great is that you have to sneak past her, but you really don't want anything else to happen while that's happening. And sometimes the game is generous, sometimes it's not.
I have to say, just using Left 4 Dead as an example, because you right, there's a stealth element there. The only time I've ever really felt tension was in the versus mode. Like, whenever I'm in normal story mode, I feel like it's just, gunshotty, grindhouse movie, shooting them all up, whatever thing. It's only really in versus when I know the opponent is just as smart as me, they're also a sentient human being, that I start getting concerned. Because all of a sudden, this horde of zombies that are controlled by the AI, like, that... they're normally not a threat, but if there's a hunter in the exact right position, he could pin me, and all of a sudden these hordes of zombies are preventing my allies from getting to me and helping me.
It sounds like I'm just terrible at that game, because I found that the single player was tense, but you're right, it doesn't compare to the versus mode.
Yeah. And even playing as the zombie, it wasn't really tense in the same way, but I remember, like, on the zombie mode, just killing a human felt like, throw fireworks into the air. Like, holy shit. Like, losing one of the human beings on the human side was so detrimental and so hard to do that it felt like an amazing accomplishment. And that's actually kind of where the Dead Space 2 multiplayer went wrong. They didn't understand that what made the Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 multiplayer so much fun was the sheer amount of effort it took to kill a human being.
Yeah.
And in Dead Space 2, like, the human beings pretty much just flying to pieces, and then they just instantly respawn and flying to pieces and instantly respawn. It's just, there wasn't a lot of tension, especially when you use a health item and you just heal everyone near you somehow. So it just, yeah, like that multiplayer wasn't as. Dead Space 2 just used a lot more jump scares than actual scare. Yeah, but that's horror, not stealth. Let's get back to the stealth.
Yeah. Another great example is what I think is that this is a game that I kind of wish I had mentioned in the Games You Haven't Played episode that we talked about off the top. It was called The Saboteur, and it was by Pandemic, which I was a fan of for a while. They did Destroy All Humans, they did Mercenaries. I'm pretty sure they did Destroy All Humans. I might not be 100% on that one. But they put together some really, really cool games. And The Saboteur was their last game before they went out of business. And it was a open world GTA style game that took place in a Nazi-occupied Paris. And you could fight toe-to-toe if you wanted to. And ammunition wasn't so hard because you can use contraband, which was the game currency, to stock up. But what was great about it was that you could climb pretty much any building you wanted to in order to escape the Nazis. So when you have this ground game where you're sneaking around and you're trying to avoid detection and kill things when you have to, and they're Nazis, so you don't feel bad about it. But it turned into a different style as soon as you started climbing that roof, and it was very liberating. And it was I enjoyed that aspect of it a ton because it was also an easier way to navigate through the town. It's not like say like a Los Angeles style map where there's a lot of roads and it's easy to get from one place to the other. This is Paris. It's condensed. And so the rooftop is a way of making the player feel like they have not power but control over what's going on. If this area that is so dense with enemies, just climb the roof and go around it. You might see a guard tower here or there, but you can take down the guard tower. You're a saboteur. You have explosives. Yeah, I love that game a lot, and if you can get it, play it.
I'm curiously reminded of, again, something that happened a lot in Assassin's Creed 1. You had throwing knives that pretty much instantly killed anyone who wasn't aware of you, and I think they probably instantly killed people aware of you. But it was hilarious because every time you threw one, like you lock onto an enemy, you throw it, and rest assured, without fail, like the knife will be flying, they turn around to, assassin! And you know, I've never alert anyone, but it was always so hilarious. Like you throw it to them, and then somehow my senses have told me that a flying dagger may be flying, or like an assassin. There you are. Oh, no, what horrible timing.
Did you ever see that video of that really bad ninja kill where I think like a white ninja hits this guy in his suit, and he's like, ah, ah, ah. You ever see that one? No, that's.
But anyways, speaking of bad examples, something which a lot of people have berated. I haven't played this yet. I wanted to play it so much, but got bad reviews. Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2.
That was a stealth game.
No.
Or stealth.
It was a action game, but it had stealth sections where you would
stealth sections.
Yes.
This is the problematic part.
Yeah, where you would essentially turn into a rat, and you have to avoid these things, which basically look like they fell out of Doom. And they could one-hit kill you. And here's the thing. You are fucking Dracula. You are goddamn motherfucking Dracula. And you are stealthing? Holy, you are the Lord of Prince of Dark. I get it. You've been asleep for thousands of years. You're really drained. And you're trying to get some of your powers back, etc., etc. But you're fucking Dracula. Why do you have to sneak past anything? Especially as a rat. Okay, Dracula could turn. Like, if you're turning into a rat, you should be turning into a swarm of rats and then just chow down on a particular target, then you reassemble.
Yeah, if anything, I want to play a game where I'm trying to avoid Dracula.
Yeah,
like Clock Tower.
Yeah.
Well, that's not Dracula. It's a guy with a giant pair of scissors, but still terrifying.
Yeah, but still, like, that was very shoehorned in and very, like, that's one of the things everyone keeps bashing about it. Like, why are you playing the Prince of Darkness and you're now forced to sneak around stuff?
Yeah.
It was misplaced. It was basically, hey, look, you know, stealth aspect games are popular right now. Let's throw in a bit of stealth.
Yeah. They also did that with this, it was a Hulk game where you would have Hulk sections and then you would have Rex Banner sections. Not Rex Banner, sorry, Dr. Bruce Banner.
Yes.
Rex Banner was a Simpsons character. But yeah, Bruce Banner, he would have to sneak around.
Yes, the invincible one on GameCube.
Yeah, he would have to sneak around lab in sections, and I don't understand. I mean, well, why bother? Other than you're just trying to fill some time, make the game feel more complete. But like, people play this game because they want to play the Hulk. The Hulk is the he's the escape power fantasy, but it's more the uncontrollable where please don't make me angry. You know, like what happens when I'm angry. So I mean, one thing that I thought could be really interesting would be, say, a game where you always start as Banner and you try to sneak around as much as possible and you try to get as much accomplished as possible. And if you're lucky, you'll get to the end of the level and you haven't had to turn into the Hulk. But if you get caught and they start beating on you and you turn into the Hulk, you have to deal with the consequences of that. So now you're dealing with a lot of pressure and you're just trying to get away.
Well, if I do remember correctly, when you were Bruce Banner, the death animation was in fact you starting to transform.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well then... So they're on the right track, but...
But then the level would end and you go back. And I would like to say in the defense of the Hulk in general, the dynamic between him and Bruce Banner is something that has always made the comic books amazing.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you can't really translate that into video games because, you're just going to have extended cutscene where he has, conversations in his head with who's in control. Like, I believe in the comic books now, he and Hulk have basically a kind of truce going on. I mean, there's still moments where he gets incredibly pissed off and the Hulk comes out, but... Basically, again, the two have an understanding, and reading the comics has always made that interesting. But in a video game, yeah, Bruce Banner sort of has limited fun stuff he can do.
Yeah, I like the Bruce Banner character. His portrayal in the Avengers was hysterical and it hit all the right notes. But yeah, not everything will translate properly into the game design. At least not yet. Sometimes it's just like with the Batman thing. There were a lot of Batman games. Some of them weren't great. A lot of them weren't great.
One of them.
Somebody had an idea where you actually play like Batman, and then it turned out great.
That also the Batman franchise is a fantastic, poster boy for why 60 frames per second is better than 30 frames per second.
Always. There's no reason why.
Yeah, well, okay, again.
I mean, limitations to your engine or whatever. Sure, you might have to do 30 frames, but 60 frames is always going to be better.
Well, I think the thing we have to remember is that we're PC gamers, so if we're trying to talk to console gamers, they don't really understand. But I did find an interesting fact. 12 frames per second is the maximum you can see as individual pictures. Once you're above 12 frames per second, your brain starts processing it as a moving image rather than a series of images. But again, once you're at 12, 13 frames per second, it's still pretty damn blurry.
Is Life going at 60 frames per second?
I think Life is going at least 120. It depends, though. I mean, if you got bad lighting, it seems to bring down the frame rate a little bit. Go ahead, try it. You can see after.
We need to go to a rave for science. How does it look over on that side? What?
Okay, you left me hanging too long.
Well, I was doing an act out.
Yes, but no, never mind.
Okay, so I wanted to touch briefly on horror and stealth a little bit more.
Because don't bring up Evil Within.
Oh man, I thought I did bring up Evil Within a couple of episodes ago.
Well,
just talking about how the whole I'm trying to logically climb up, and then there was an invisible wall. I was like, well, that's all right. But Silent Hill is, I think, the best example of using a combination of stealth and horror. Because in Resident Evil, you're not really sneaking around; you're just running for it.
Yeah.
In say like Fatal Frame, they will always get the drop on you, and you have to take the photo, and you have to deal with the fact that you're probably scared shitless. Which, by the way, they're making Fatal Frame for the Wii U. I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Okay. Two things. One, I actually like that idea because that seems one of the few really good usage.
Yeah, exactly.
Tablet.
Like, holy shit.
That seems actually like a fantastic idea to me.
It does.
However, the images I've seen of the new one so far has everybody in fetish underwear.
Okay, your point?
It's a horror game where all the characters are female, which is perfectly fine, but they apparently all have fetish underwear outfits.
Right.
So you're walking around an abandoned. If you haven't figured out how this is not right, I'm not quite sure how to explain it.
I don't think is that their base costume.
I don't know.
Is that their classic attire?
I don't know. I just know that there was a little blurb and it showed again those costumes, and I'm sort of thinking, why would you be running around a haunted house in nothing but your underwear?
I have two ideas for that. One, the Japanese treat sexuality much more different than we do. And also, I would argue that they're a little more mature about it. And number two, in their own weird way, I know that was a loaded statement. I might have opened a can of worms. Number two, maybe they were brought there against their will, and they were going to be part of a ritual, and so that was their ritual attire.
Okay, that may not be that unreasonable, but still, you have to admit that it kind of doesn't belong in horror, especially when we're being attacked by zombies and other things. It's just. Is this Goro?
It depends on what element of horror you're assessing, because there are a lot of classic horror films where the women are always dressed up like victims, like in the long flowing gown or something like that. But yeah, so I just wanted to touch on Silent Hill because I always thought Silent Hill did the avoiding the monsters really well, and using the term stealth is a bit strange only because again, the same thing. It's not like Harry or whoever sneaks up behind the pyramid monster and slits their throat. It's like trying to avoid detection. And in Silent Hill is that same resource problem, but it's not just a matter of you only have so much ammunition. I mean, you do get a melee weapon that you can use indefinitely. The problem is you're playing a regular person. You're not
all the powers of a standard human being.
But you don't have. But your combat prowess is none too spectacular. So you are going to not want to get into these fights because you will lose these fights, or they will take a lot out of you.
But they still kind of see you. Like, I can't really think of any of the Resident Evil games where they don't at least know where you are. Like, it tends to be you just running around them.
Yeah, that's why Resident Evil doesn't work quite as well in this example. Although in Resident Evil 4, There might be a few instances where you can get past them.
Not that I noticed when I played it.
Yeah, I mean, in Resident Evil 4, you might as well just shoot everyone anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it's the amount of ammo they left. There were very few, like, there were some combat avoidance sections where you would try to run past as fast as you could, but most of the time, you seem to just shoot them. I mean, if you used a grenade at the right time, it'd be amazing how many bullets these guys drop, given the fact that they're not using guns themselves. I mean, why are you dropping bullets when you don't have guns?
Yeah, exactly. Where'd those things come from?
Yeah.
But you really have to suspend your disbelief with those kind of things. I mean, what are you going to do? Not take the ammo? I just always thought it was weird that the roaming salesman that always had a bunch of rare things on sale today, Stranger, has all these different guns and all these things that you can buy. They never seem to have ammo on them.
No, in fact, you had to sort of sell your ammo to... It makes sense if you sell your ammo to him, it keeps track of how much ammo you've sold to him, and then you could buy it back later, like at a higher price, or some kind of profit, because...
Can you just hold this for me? You seem to have no problem holding hundreds and hundreds of objects.
Yeah, like I've got, like, here's all this Magnum ammunition. I don't have a Magnum. A couple levels later, okay, now I have a Magnum. Can I get those back, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. And towards the end, it did what all Resident Evils do. It was like, oh, the horror dissipates, and in replacement, you have military conspiracies, laboratories, and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah. Oh, well. It was good while it lasted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just racking my brain for a second because I had another example. Oh, Tenchu. We didn't really touch much about that aspect of it, but I mean, ninjas are just so perfect when it comes to stealth games. And the ninjas are great because they encompass what it is about being stealthy and still feeling like you have some power to your name. So there's another solid example. Our mutual fan had mentioned the Thief series, which I haven't actually gone around to playing yet, but medieval stealth is great for a lot of reasons too, because I feel like it's kind of an even playing field. No one has technology on their side. If you introduce magic, then you have a problem.
Well, the Thief series occasionally dealt with occults and the enemy having all sorts of weird things. You also had one hell of a collapsible bow. Mm-hmm. Like, it was amazing how small that thing became and was still effective, but yeah, I sort of mean, like, stealth games in general, you can't really do it in an era with closed circuit television, or at least it's not as easy to do it in closed circuit. Like, that's one
imagine doing like a stealth game where it takes place in the future where there's drones everywhere, you know?
Well, that was actually one of the weird things about Human Revolution. It just never seemed to be any security cameras around. Like, I do remember, I think it may have in fact been Invisible War. People, please get over Invisible War. Yes, it was a bad game, but it actually did exist. From what I understood, you had your standard cloak, but then you had something that would make you invisible to robots, but you couldn't use both at once. So it was a matter of trying to alternate between, whatever types of invisibility as you needed them. Mm-hmm. So that at least, kept you active and, at least had you try to check the line of sights of who you were, seen by.
Yeah, it feels like the further back you go in history, the easier it is to make a stealth game, because like your Deus Ex example, the fact that there are no cameras is kind of a glaring issue. You can't help but think about that when you play this game. I mean, you're thankful it's not there.
Well, but there were some, but they weren't all over the place like you'd expect them to be.
Yeah, exactly. Which you can justify as if it were real life and there were actually cameras everywhere, it would make sense. But then you use Assassin's Creed, you use your Thief, you use anything medieval based, and yeah, like you were saying with the identification problem, these are all things that make that particular reality more believable, and so it just works so much better in that situation.
You could, in theory, just go so far as say a dystopian future, give yourself lots of nice technology, but again, just make the cameras scarce or non-existent. And speaking of cameras, there was a bit of in the first BioShock game, there were stealth. You could avoid people. Like the Splinters would run around doing whatever they want. Splicers. I'm going to get punched for that later. The Splicers were walking around doing whatever the heck they want, and I remember I had an ability that if I stood still, I would turn invisible.
Yep.
So I would hear them moving, I'd stop, and I'd walk past, and they actually seemed to have some like very primitive but some level of conversation. And they'd be walking. They weren't patrolling. They were just going about, and you could actually avoid them doing that. And every security camera in there, you had to get up to it without it noticing you, so you could hack it and get it on your side. God knows I had all sorts of hacking powers for that.
There was, I mean, if it did see me, I would jump up and try to hack it anyways, which I always thought was really funny. Whenever you're hacking something in that game and everybody else is seeing you do it, it's like, wait, let him do this.
Well, the second game, for all its faults, at least had you hacking as a real-time minigame. You'd fire this dart at it, and then you'd have to, but that felt more action-y. Like you could actually just stay at a distance, fire the hack dart, just make sure you got more hack darts in your side pockets. Like the first Bioshock, even though it paused time, if it goes off, it's summoning all hell on you, and if you can't get to it while being shot at by 3 different flying drones, then, well, that actually doesn't sound that unreasonable. You're being shot at by 3 different flying drones.
Well, wow, Bioshock predicted the future yet again. I, for one, was fine with the way they did it in Bioshock 2. I thought it flowed a lot better in the combat scenarios. But, people have had their opinions on Bioshock 2. Let's not get into that.
There actually was an entire help form on Bioshock 2 for, I can only use my drill, I can't use my weapons. And the answer was, you equipped the drill specialist tonic, you idiot. Did you not read the entire flavor text on the tonic you just used?
We haven't mentioned MOBAs yet, but stealth does exist in MOBAs.
I was thinking about that a little earlier, but then I forgot. That's actually a very good point.
Yeah. Now, speaking of somebody who doesn't generally play characters with stealth, I hate it. I hate that stealth means that you automatically have to deal with getting stealth detection. It's a reactionary measure, and it's not something that you can use aggressively.
Well, keep calm and nix.
Okay, I'm gonna punch you for that. I used to really hate Nyx Assassin, but I got over it. It's called learning how to play. But yeah, I mean, how many stealth-based characters are there in Dota 2? You have Bounty Hunter, you have Ricky Maru, you have Nyx Assassin, you have, Phantom Assassin, she doesn't go invisible, but her icon doesn't appear on the minimap, so she can kind of avoid detection a little bit.
Something I would actually say was was best played kind of an assassin-y character would be Night Stalker, especially if you get Aghanim Scepter. Whenever it's nighttime, he has flying vision. He can see around everything. So all of a sudden, you've got somebody who can stalk you through trees and through unpassable terrain, and you have no idea they're coming for you. So he's actually a very good assassin-y character.
Yeah. The only thing that kind of gets me about stealth in MOBAs is the way that being invisible and being sneaky seems to have more of an impact based off their abilities than, say, like a tank in that game feels as tanky, or a caster feels as castery. That's not to say that these other characters aren't powerful at all. Obviously they are. But when you can accomplish so much just by going invisible, you can detect, you can keep your eye out, you can pick off people as they try to make a run for it. You have all these options and all these freedoms from being invisible. And on top of that, depending on the character you can play, you can also probably get some good items and still be pretty good in a fight and deal a lot of damage. Whereas, when you're playing a caster character, you pretty much are just trying to hit things with your spells. So you have to see things in order to hit them with your spells.
Well, I think we're going to talk about stealth in MOBAs. Like, Dota 2 is a good example because it pretty much is a faithful homage to the original Dota, the thing that started the genre. But something that's in League of Legends and also Heroes of the Storm is brush. There's, grass all over the place.
Brush shows up a lot. I think, what was it? Not Strife, from the guys who did Heroes of New Earth. They're making a new one, and there's brush in that too. But yeah, it comes up a lot.
Yeah, like the idea is you go into it, you've broken line of sight, and anyone who isn't in the same thing of brush as you can't see you, or if you attack, you kind of reveal yourself. And that gives a lot of new stealth elements, because now anyone can hide. People who aren't typically assassin-y characters, but have some form of gap close, can hide in the brush and attack people, and League of Legends actually has a number of characters that if you're out of sight, it gives you bonuses or all sorts of attack things. But now that I think of it, like even the whole idea of brush, you're technically invisible, turning actually invisible, etc. Possibly one of the best instances of stealth in a MOBA would in fact be Smite, because Smite is a third-person over-the-camera perspective, or behind the character perspective. So unlike every other MOBA where...
Sorry, I just thought of something I can't believe we almost didn't mention, but finish your thought.
Well, unlike every other MOBA where you're seeing everything from the top down, which is kind of, I prefer it in a game like a MOBA, this one is right behind you, so you can flank people. If you see them facing a particular direction, they can't see behind them. So as an assassin character, I don't think there's brush in that game, but as an assassin character, you can now actually pay attention to what direction they're facing, what they're doing, like all that stuff, and you now know you can get behind them and jump on them.
And if third person wasn't advantageous to a stealth person already, it gets even harder when it's a first person shooter and you have a spy who can backstab you for instant damage. We almost forgot to mention the spy.
You're right.
But yeah.
I think he was, rated number 10 on the list of 100 top PC gaming villains of all time. Even the spy not being a spy is an effective stealth tactic, because all of a sudden everyone's a spy. Welcome to TF2, where points don't matter and everyone's a spy. Because the moment the spy goes on even a little bit of a killing spree, or even kills one or two people spontaneously, you're acting suspicious, you're a spy, you're acting suspicious, you're a spy. And it would lead to all these interesting situations because you're now second-guessing your own teammates. And even when you're all keeping in perfect vocal whatever it is, there's this one heavy who's making his way to the battlefield, and the medic comes, and he goes up, and it doesn't really look the best situation, goes around like, medic, and then...
What are you doing, Heavy? I'm Ubering you. Oh my god, you're a spy!
I was never really on your side.
There was this one time in TF2 where they were all, we had pushed the cart almost to the objective point, but then they had pushed, they had started fighting their way to us. And then I just snuck away from the fight, wandered over to the cart. It was completely unguarded, and I just did the whole thing myself. That was great. That was a good time.
The stealth in that game really TF2 is kind of akin to a role-playing game, not in the typical we think
There's
of
no
level.
stats progression, but yeah, I get
but
it.
Each person feels so different from everybody else, and everyone's got their own little game they're playing, and the spy is interesting because he's not playing anyone else's game. It's not his job to assist in fortifications by standing there being a turret or building a turret. He's not trying to help the push by healing everyone. He has his own singular role that nobody can help him with, and no one really hard counters. I mean, yes, you can light him on fire, and you can see he's on fire and all that kind of stuff, but it's not like there's specifically somebody who automatically counters Spy just for being there.
The Spy is the epitome of mind games.
Yeah.
So you have to outsmart him.
I mean,
he is vulnerable. Once you see him, it just takes one rocket to the ground to blow him up. So you can outfight him, but yeah, it's hard. It's just hard to catch him.
Yeah, and the moment they introduced the Dead Ringer, you remember that?
I do. I love the Dead Ringer. I love being the combat spy. Bang! I wasn't dead. Bang!
Well, I like the Dead Ringer because it forces you to try to get into the opponent's territory without turning invisible. What a lot of new players TF2 do not realize is that the spy can disguise himself as members of his own team. So, back before the whistle comes out, you can actually, instead of turning invisible and using up the whatever on your watch, you can take out the cigarette case, select, blue pyro. Okay, now I look like my allied pyro. So you can actually run out of the gate pretending to be somebody else.
Die.
Die.
For the Dead Ringer.
Or even just have it just as a maneuverability thing. Try to get around, try to snake around. If you're caught, you can use the Dead Ringer. Or if you make it to the enemy's territory without ever having a Dead Ringer, you then just switch costumes. Or if you get to a certain place, just switch costumes. And again, it's the infinite paranoia aspect of the spy that makes them popular. There's a reason why they keep making the joke, everybody's a spy. Because, a good spy would be amazing. And then they came out with that stupid heavy machine gun that lights him on fire whenever he's shooting it. Why? Valve, why?
Vanilla servers.
I love vanilla servers.
They are.
Vanilla TF2 is the best TF2.
I think we've hit all the major examples. I'm curious about what are some good examples in the indie scene because I'm not much of an indie expert. So if anybody in the comments wants to point out some good examples, I'd be interested in knowing a little bit more about that.
I think something we should really walk away with is stealth sections unto themselves are not evil, but if there's no reason for them to be there, they shouldn't be there. There's, again, a lot of games coming out lately that just want to tap in a little bit to the Arkham Asylum popularity and, you know, have a functional stealth section.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the Lords of Shadow 2, I am fucking Dracula. Why are you making me turn into a mouse and sneak around? Like, I haven't played that game, so I'm really hoping at some point you get, like, the Flame Gauntlets or something, and you go up to people like, hey, remember those levels I spent sneaking around you? Stab! 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 Again, I'm not stabbing you.
I know you're not stabbing me. I would know if you were stabbing me.
Also,
unless you're a spy.
Yeah, actually, there's one last very strange stealth aspect I want to mention, which may be a little weird. In the original Unreal Tournament and throughout, like, 2 and 3, you could assign a button. It typically wasn't normally assigned off the bat, but you could assign a button that would cause you to ragdoll.
Oh yeah, actually that reminds me, the hunters in World of Warcraft have a feigned death. Oh, and there's rogues. I didn't even mention those.
Yeah, but this created a very strange stealth aspect, which for me never worked, because if you're going ragdoll, most people notice you're still holding your gun. Well, at least that's how it worked in number 3. Number 2, I think they actually had you drop your gun when you do. But you could have people run past you thinking you're dead, push the button again, your character hops back up. The main problem is that when you're playing Unreal Tournament, the most popular weapons are the flak cannon and the rocket launcher. So if a dead body isn't giblets, then most people aren't fooled by the faint death. I mean, I will admit to occasionally using the biogun because there's a certain satisfaction, especially in the third game, in watching your opponent turn into a skeleton and then fall over. But again, that was a very noticeable, you're clearly not dead because now you're a skeleton.
Right on. Well, if that's the last thing you wanted to mention, I think we're good.
Okay. Well.
Now let's, I guess...
Smoke bomb!
Is that supposed to actually work? You actually have a smoke bomb.
Okay, well, it's yeah. That's pathetic. That's can you? I don't think they can see it. Crap.
I can't put any smoke in post.
Back to the drawing board with those.